muted.
Yeah, I'll keep muting and if they come in.
My opening question to you is just identify the main theme. Good. Okay. But I cannot help but invite you to talk a little bit about some of the people you mentioned, particularly Reverend Carr and Moshe Stein. Yes. Yep. Okay, we ready? Thank you. Yeah. Julius said you will do that. Thank you very much indeed. Very often. I've got a good man at my left-hand side anyway, definitely. You know, Rabbi, you came to, of course, when you published your book, well, the anti-Semitism, the trials of the diocese. Yes, of course. Well, you're just next door to the shore where I grew up, which was Southgate and Harley Street. That was 14 years. 14? Yes. Yeah. I retired.
Absolutely. Gracious Rabbi Ginsbury, Professor Julius, Rabbonim and friends. When Rabbi Ginsbury asked me yesterday who should say a few words of welcome this evening and make an introduction on behalf of the Hendon Coordinated Charities, I suggested that it should perhaps be made by someone with charisma and gravitas. I agree, replied the Rav. I asked Jonathan Miller, but he's unable to make it this evening. Therefore, it falls upon me, minus the gravitas, to welcome you all here this evening for the launch of Rabbi Ginsbury's book, The Jigsaw Puzzle of Life. The last time the Hendon Coordinated Charities were involved with something like this was when we were approached by Danny Verboff to assist with the publication of a book entitled My Dear Friends, a selection of Divrei Torah and speeches by the late Reverend who was a former life president of the Coord for over 40 years. All the proceeds from the sale of that book went to the Hendon Coord, and in a similar vein, the proceeds from the sales of the Jigsaw Puzzle of Life will go to the charity. The Hendon Coordinated Charities has been closely associated with Hendon Synagogue. Its primary purpose is and always has been to help members of our community who need financial assistance. Whilst the help is mainly given biannually at Pesach and Rosh Hashanah, we react very quickly to any deserving cases brought to our attention at any time of the year. We are and remain reliant upon and appreciative of donations from individuals throughout the year. The committee is made up of a handful of responsible and discreet volunteers, which helps to ensure that every single pound donated is distributed in full and in complete confidence to those who are most in need of our help. Now, my friends, I have yet to read The Jigsaw Puzzle of Life, so I am unable to offer you any insights or quotations, but I do know that Rabbi Ginsbury has worked tirelessly on it for about 2 years. And I would like to offer my personal shikoyach to you, Rabbi, for its completion and for selflessly and generously deciding to pass on the proceeds to the coordinated charities. PG, with Hanukkah almost upon us, as well as the other festive season fast approaching, we hope to see in Yitzhak Hashem, the Jigsaw Puzzle of Life in the Amazon bestseller list very soon. It is now my honor and privilege to introduce Professor Anthony Julius, Deputy Chair of Mishkan Derea and Professor Law and Arts at the Faculty of Law at UCL, who will join in conversation with the author of The Jigsaw Puzzle of Life and Life President of the Hendon Coordinated Charities for the last 25 years, our very own Rabbi Ginsbury. Thank you.
So, welcome everybody. I have to. Can you hear me? Is that yes? I wanted to say that actually that those two titles are the kind of public-facing titles, but actually the title that I'm particularly proud of is former member of Roddy Close Shul. And I look around and I feel like I'm in some kind of time travel science fiction story because I've got older, but no one else here has got. It's a very odd experience for me because everybody here is as I remember you all a few years ago. I joined the shul shortly after Rabbi and Judy Ginsbury joined. And for many years, I felt that our paths just tracked each other. It was a great pleasure and privilege for me to be a member of a shul that Rabbi Ginsbury was the Rav, and just as great a pleasure and privilege for me that even after I left for, in the event NW11, just whisper the postcode, we stayed in contact and we continue to be friends and we exchange ideas and go to each other's simchas. And so when the opportunity came up for me to engage with his book, of course, I leapt at it. We're here this evening to talk about the book, and we're also here to invite questions. And I'm not going to hog the questions. So I'm going to speak a little bit. Rabbi Ginsbury is going to speak as is appropriate, a good deal more. And then we're going to pause in about 25 or 30 minutes, maybe, something like that. And I will act as a kind of chair of the evening and invite questions. And I'm told by Rabbi Ginsbury that the more provocative the question, the happier he'll be. I was anticipating being kind of guessing. The book is available for purchase. Those of you who haven't read it yet will have an opportunity to hear a bit about its things that it's not possible in the hour or so that we got. So no one should think after this evening that they're relieved of the obligation of reading the book. I feel like I ought to say that because otherwise, you know, the quick summary, the short review, too often substitutes for engagement with the work itself. Anyway, so that's enough from me. Rabbi Ginsbury, first question. Just tell us something about the major theme of the work and the slightly puzzling title.
So, first of all, thank you, Anthony, for joining me in conversation. When we were planning this evening, and I was discussing with Judy, we need a real A-list crowd, and we both said immediately A for Anthony and J for Julius, and so things, as you say, we've had a warm and very special connection over many years, and it's something which Judy and I value greatly, and it's wonderful that you and Katrina are here joining us this evening. I'd also like to thank our children and children-in-law, children all, who are with us here this evening. Even some of our grandchildren as well, and other members of the family. Missing but is on Zoom is my wife Judy, who many of you know last week had
I suppose it's relatively minor surgery, hernia surgery, but it had to be open surgery, takes a bit of time to get over. And so she's watching on Zoom, touring with us, refreshments afterwards, which we'll all have to take a very good look at. And I think we'll enjoy, possibly even if we get the chance to break it open, to enjoy eating it as well. But you'll see what that is when we go through later on. A bit of a puzzle, a bit of a teaser to be able to themes. I didn't intend to write this particular book. When we went on Israel for sabbatical in early 22, it was actually Sheldon Stone sitting right in front of me who said, we need a book called Hashkafat Rabbi Ginsbury. That wasn't what the jigsaw puzzle of life was supposed to be. And it was actually supposed to be my Shabbos Shuvah and Shabbos Hakot Droshes. It was supposed to be a sefer which was doing quite, might not have attracted quite as many people as much interest as this evening is. And it was an amazing course of hashgacha, of divine intervention. Tuesday night went to a particular wedding, and at that wedding we met Rabbi Yaakov Haber, who is the principal of Mosaic Press. I told him I was on sabbatical thinking about writing a book, and he said, you need to speak to my CEO, Rabbi Doron Kornbluth, who I spoke to the next day. We had a Zoom conversation, and he convinced me that what was needed more than a sefer of my Shabbos Shuvah and Shabbos Hakot Droshes was what I'd started writing by way of introduction, which turned out to be the first 11 chapters of the Jigsaw Puzzle of Life. And if I had to sum up in 2 or 3 themes of the book, is to show that the personal overrides the transactional. So what that means is, or you want to achieve a particular goal, it is, as they're saying about the incoming president of the United States of America, whose name I will not deign to mention at this particular juncture, but transactional. It's not. Meaningful life, purposeful life is about building long-term personal relationships. I developed that theme quite significantly in the book. That's number 1. Number 2 is to understand one to admit to. I quote a particular gentleman, some of whose family are here tonight, a former member of the shul, unfortunately deceased some years ago, Harold Margolis Oliver Sholem, who used to say, what happens at your table happens at my table, happens at his table, happens at her table. One of the things that blights our lives is that whatever problems or struggles we have, we think are unique to us, and therefore our lives are spoiled by them, but everyone else has got a great life. We've all got great lives. If we can, as Rainer Maria Rilke, I quote elsewhere in the book, says, if your life seems poor, don't blame your life, blame yourself for being insufficient poet to call forth its riches. The book is about trying to summon the riches that each of us have in our lives, and to understand that one can move from bitter to sweet, as I speak about in chapter 4, in being able to deal with challenges, adversity, and disappointment. A third element, which is the main part of chapter 3 of the book, is outward directed kindness. I cite 4 or 5 examples of wonderful people I knew in my former congregation in Prestwich in Manchester, and I've known here in London, of people who have shown outward directed kindness. And that has made such a difference to their lives and to the lives of others around them. And then the 4th element is to make oneself as small as possible. In the acknowledgements, in the early part of the book, I mentioned the fact that more than this book being a set of anecdotes and personal memoirs, in the shared siyata dishmaya, divine assistance of the we rather than the I. I've tried in the book not to deal with yichus. If someone's name is mentioned, it's mentioned because it's direct or particular activity which I'm addressing at that particular moment. It's not that some people are more worthy than others. We're all equally worthy. So the 4 themes, if you like, which I would say run through the jigsaw puzzle of life, is the personal overriding the transactional, life struggles being a springboard actually for achievement, outward directed kindness and being able to understand that we all have our struggles, but we can overcome them and lead a rich, meaningful, good life, and to make oneself as happy as possible. I conclude this particular section just by saying that earlier on today, someone who couldn't be here tonight, it's amazing looking at the room, there is someone who couldn't be here tonight, but there are a few people who gave their apologies. And thank you all so much for attending. I've never quite seen a crowd like this in this room. Certainly not when we could use microphones, because only perhaps on Yom Kippur and the Illa we see a crowd quite like this. But this person said to me, enjoy your moment in the limelight. I thought about it, I thought, yeah, it's nice, 15 minutes of fame or whatever, etc. Even Anthony's promised he's going to be nice to me this evening and not the forensic lawyer he's reputed to be. But one thing I would say is, honestly, as much as possible, I'm trying to make sure it's not about me, but it's about the themes which are really important. Buy the book, the cohort will benefit, and hopefully you will also find life's lessons that I found significant in being able to develop that which I've been able to do and enrich my life, and hopefully that's my family around me as well.
So thank you for that. And I'm going to respond, because what I'd like to do is I'd like to encourage more of a conversation than a question and answer, and we'll see where it takes us. We haven't mapped any of this out. It is immediately to notice what we might call the humanistic quality of what Rabbi Ginsbury has said. And it's the very opposite of any disrespect when I say that humanistic element has a kind of Jewish neutral quality to it. I could imagine that being said to a wide variety of audiences, Jewish, non-Jewish, Jewish of one kind or another, and it immediately resonating. Kindness, the negotiating of the difficulties of one's life into something which is somewhat more positive, the personal over the transactional, and also not being so self-important as to miss the complexity and beauty of life and the contributions that other people make. These are so important, these life lessons. And so I have two observations, or really, or two questions. The first is, it's a book which is obviously so saturated also in Jewish values and Jewish thinking, that I would like to understand a bit more about how you connect what I call the humanistic with the Jewish. And secondly, I'm wondering whether at some point you've thought about taking these messages and arguments to other audiences.
Thank you. Those are two very interesting observations. I was thinking before this evening that one can actually read the jigsaw puzzle of life in one of four ways. You can either read the 3 paragraphs on the back of the book, which give a very good summary, that you'll be done in about 15 to 20 seconds. You could just read the preface, acknowledgements, and the afterword, and you could then go through the first onto various droshes and sermons and writings from over the years, Yom Tov and Torah writings, etc. You're quite right that there is a meeting point between that which it is to be a good, decent human being at whatever level, and that element of being a Yirei Shamayim and being suffused with the values that Torah and mitzvahs breathe into us. I think, and I would like to think, that as the Mishnah tells us in Ein Torah, there's a circle between the two. You've got to have that basic decency till you can get to Torah. But you can't get to something which one will find as one reads through the book and proceeds through the book, that nuanced and sensitive elements. You can't get through to those elements of people feeling that sense of identity, empathy with the themes, unless you first establish that basic substrate which is going to take them through to, if you like, the more nuanced and sensitive levels of Yiras Shamayim. And I think one will find that in different parts of the book. In particular, if I just come to the afterword itself, etc., where I reference the awful attacks of October the 7th, which I also reference in the opening part of the book. And there I refer to the question that the answers may seem to be beyond us, but the responses are the essence of the jigsaw puzzle that makes us who we are, individually and collectively continuing to put together the pieces. And there I come to the fact that from the sense of unified purpose, this is the more humanistic you're referring to, empathy and resolve, to support those suffering from loss, injury, dislocation, displacement, uncertainty. That's very important, dealing with uncertainty. That's something, a big theme for all of us at the moment. Emerges a picture of people wounded and hurt, but neither cowed nor vanquished. Netzach Yisrael Yeshaka. Here we come into it. It's that connection to the eternal hope of Israel, which does not deceive. Psalm I shall not want. We do not believe, but rather know that we shall prevail. And that, of course, is, as a community rabbi, one of the hardest things, where you actually and how you actually help people along that journey facilitate their own growth in emunah and in love. And it starts with menschlichkeit, it starts with derech eretz, and hopefully it moves on, as does the jigsaw puzzle of life, into those elements of the Moadim, reflections on the Yom Tovim, the Sedras, the cycle of Jewish life, the cycle of the Jewish year.
So thank you for that. I had a second question, which was other audiences. Maybe that answer was part of what you've already said. My sense is that much of what you began by talking about would be just as relevant for any other group of interested, concerned people wanting to make the best of their lives and to understand what it is to behave in a decent way.
I'm open for all opportunities, all people for the right price, please. And coordinated charities, of course.
Yes.
No, I also it's a matter of interest.
Yes.
One-on-one conversations I'm continually having, both with local religious leaders of faiths and of the political leadership of Barnet and our MP, etc. But I'm not sure that the jigsaw puzzle of life through the audience as a whole, and I hope that those that, as well as the chesed,
develop the path laid out by the late Jewish thinking into
sounds like something's happening.
it feels very much like the kind of the Anglo-Jewish way to have that ambition, and at the same time to relate them to Jewish concerns and show a way in which Jews can contribute to the broader political self-understanding of the nation.
Yes, I think this comes back to the point I made on the very first outset of this conversation.
Yes.
The writing of this book, is it a safer or is it a book? And the answer is, I hope it's a bit of both. There will, as well as Rabbi Sachs, I cite a number of other mentors, Rabbi Shlomo Wolber, Zechron Livrocha, under whom I learned in Beyak in my early years in the yeshiva world, really took me on the journey into something I just hadn't been connected with previously to the same extent. Rabbi Matis Solomon Zatzal, and Rabbi Sachs Zatzal was also someone who I had a fascinating connection with, and many very meaningful and deep conversations over the years, as well as having read his works. And I quote him a lot in the early parts of the book as well. But again, as I say, I think I've written this book primarily for our community, the community here in Hendon, and beyond. Beyond meaning within not just the Anglo-Jewish community, I hope, although we've taken sort of 400 books to sell here within the Anglo-Jewish community, they will also be sold by Mosaica in the States and in Israel. But I think above all else, what I hope is, let's start, as it were, with the Kirvas Achim, with drawing together those who can be inspired by the message. And maybe it won't even be me who'll take that message forward. Maybe there'll be others who read it and will take that message further forward. I don't know where this is going to go. It's the beginning of a journey, which, as I say, is one to which I'm deeply indebted to family, to friends, to community, also a number of my rabbinic colleagues who are this evening, which is also greatly appreciated. Rabbis have extremely busy diaries, and to come out on a Sunday night to join the conversation of a colleague isn't something that always happens, so it's very much appreciated. And as I say, I hope that some way or another this conversation will be taken forward, but not necessarily by myself.
No, and I began by talking about the biggest possible themes, but I want to now get much more local. So one of the pleasures for me of reading the book was to be reminded of many of the names, personalities, of people who were so important in the life of the community who are no longer with us. And I want to mention two in particular, Reverend Hardman, and also Moshe Steinhardt. He was an extraordinary figure for me. When we first joined the shul, he told me exactly where I'd be sitting, what I should be doing, where I should be looking, how I should be behaving, when I should stand, when I should sit, when I should turn up, when I should not turn up. And essentially, he gave me a book of rules of conduct of members of the shul that, if I'd reduced them to writing, would have covered at least 3 volumes. And he was only just starting. And Reverend Hardman, of course, was a very significant figure. Just immensely to your credit, Rabbi Ginsbury, that the two of you navigated a quite tricky relationship, rabbi and former leader of the community, in a way which just did so much credit to both of you and reflected the dignity of each of you. It was one of the lessons that I learned, reflected on, which is in the legal world, partners always retiring and arriving, and one coexists with different colleagues at different stages of their lives. And to actually manage that relationship, which is tricky, I think, requires a great deal of sensitivity. So this is not a question, this is just my opportunity to pay credit on a specific point to Rabbi Ginsbury. But I just wonder whether you might share with us some of your own reflections of our Shamus and the former leader of the shul.
I'd be absolutely delighted to do so. And I'd start with a story that happened with Judy and myself when we were visiting an elderly lady patient in now it's long been closed. There was a geriatric unit behind Colindale Station. I don't know if it remembers it, Colindale Hospital. Spent a few minutes talking to her. It was a very nice meeting, etc. And as we're going out, there's a lady at the second bed to the end of the ward, calls out, "Oi!" Okay, she says, "Ich bin eichet a Yiddische Frau." I thought, there's trouble here. I can just smell, this. So we stopped and we talked. And we said, yes, we're visiting a lady from our shul. And which shul are you part of? And she said, well, I'm not sure. It was this shul, it was that. And she says, where are you from? She says, very suspiciously. So I said, my wife and I are from Riley Close, Hendon. Hendon, she said? Hendon? She says, what's wrong with Reverend Hardman then? He'd been retired at that point 18 years. And I said to Judy that my muzzle and her muzzle was that we came to shul 18 years after he retired, not 18 months. And once when Reverend Hardman and Rabbi Silberg, Oliver Sholem, and myself, were together, we reflect on the fact that for Rabbi Silberg, it wasn't necessarily as easy as I had it, sort of moving from one to the other. But I must say, I came both from a rabbinic family and also from 14 years as senior rabbi at Preston, which you mentioned. I thought that, I was pretty well trained and au fait with everything you could possibly know from the rabbinate. And I learned so much from Reverend Harman, I must tell you, in pastoral care matters. In particular, I remember we were sitting together at the Shiva House on one occasion, and there was a lovely lady, since passed away, sitting there, and she started asking all these sorts of questions, which I talk about in the Jigsaw Puzzle of Life, but not why, suddenly, why bad things happen to good people. How do you cope with that? It's a different question. But she was asking why it happens. And I began to try all sorts of Jewish philosophy, and suddenly I feel a hand on my knee, and it's Reverend Harman. He says, Shah, he says, Shah, just flash her your winning smile and say nothing. And that was actually very wise, sagacious advice. He knew me well. He knew me well. But no, overall, it was a tremendous relationship. And I actually felt myself privileged to know Reverend Harman through the last 10 years of his life, through the loss of his beloved Josie, and also in his last days in hospital. I was deeply moved when I went to visit him, and he had an oxygen mask at the time. And as I was walking away, he signaled to come back to the bed, and he just whispered the words, and they were very sincere. You can tell when somebody means something. And he said, Teshuva me'ava. In his last words on this earth, he was thinking about teshuva, repentance, me'ava, out of love of God. That really deeply impressed me, and I fondly and respectfully remember him. Moshe Steinhardt, very different, but also fondly remember him. But we had some amazing times. And Moshe, if he was your friend, would save you from the most terrible, terrible things. And if he wasn't, oh boy. So there's a story I tell about myself very early on in the shul, when we had a huge wedding here, huge wedding in the days when there were men on the left and women on the right, and men upstairs and women upstairs, and all over the place, etc., etc. We had this wedding, and I did the opening brachas. I'd spoken to the chosn and color beautifully, I thought. Anyway, all going swimmingly well. I said, Moshe, can we have the ksuva, please? Now, the rabbis here in the room will know I missed out just about the most important of the whole ceremony. And Moshe comes up and says, Rebbe Laban, he says, dear Rabbi, he says, don't we have something to do with a ring before we read the ksuva? So I said, Moshe, may you be blessed. You just saved me from the most embarrassing situation. And he did that on one occasion. But I think Jonathan Benson's here this evening, isn't he? Jonathan was our administrator at the time. And there was a great story when Alan Portnoy gave Jonathan free rein to redesign the office, which I think was happiest 2 weeks in his 10 years or so here as administrator in the shul. And every day he could be there in the office just in his dungarees, rebuilding suited insurance agents coming in to check the integrity of the steels of the main shul. So I saw these two people come in and said, good morning, can I help you? Yes, please, we're looking for the senior administrator because we need to check the steels in the main synagogue building. I said, well, he's actually a little bit preoccupied at the moment, but he is there in the office, maybe he can help you. Went in and Jonathan was there with your finger, I don't remember, over a mullet pipe. And I said, Jonathan, he said, yes, took his finger off the pipe, at which a big flow of black gunge flew up all over his face. The people looked at one another and thought, well, on earth have they come to? How rapidly shut the door? Jonathan said, can you call Moshe, please? So I called Moshe, and it was from the old Beis HaMedrash. And Moshe came with his shock of gray hair bouncing up and down, and he was very respectful and loving towards me. He said, yes, Rabbi, yes, Rabbi, yes, Rabbi. These people looked at him and they thought, what on earth is this? So I said, please don't mind him. He's from Barcelona. Somehow, we got through the inspection and the main shul is still standing. So there you are. And in better condition than for many a year.
I never thought I would hear you compare yourself to Basil Foods. So that for me has been the event so far of the evening. What struck me most about Moshe Steinhardt was that for him, being a shamus was a vocation. And that felt to me something which put us all in the shul at that moment very much in touch with the Stiebels of the 19th century and before, that there should be a person whose job was a shamus, who understood his life as a Jew, as a shamus. This kind of person, this vocation, seems to have just gone in much of our Jewish world, and no doubt we're the poorer for it. It made me reflect when I saw the reference. I was so pleased to see the reference to him, more than one reference to him in the book. It made me wonder, how many years have you been at this shul? 25, 26 years. I'm sure we would all like to hear a little bit. It's not altogether reflected in the book, but I'm sure we would like to hear a little bit about, Rabbi Ginsbury, your sense of how the shul has changed. Not just the passing of Moshe, and I don't think there's a full-time shamus anymore. Raleigh close. Am I right?
We have a wonderful part-time shamus. I'm not sure if he's here tonight. David Carmel. David, you're here?
Obviously quite part-time.
Yeah.
But how else has the shul changed?
That's a very good question, Nancy. It's a very important question. Firstly, a bit of background for Moshe. I don't know how many people know this, but he actually lost his mother at a very young age and was placed in an orphanage, the famous Diskin orphanage in Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, and his Yiddishkeit, when you talked before about humanism and moving from there, he was a deeply, deeply wonderful, warm, humorous, self-deprecating. He understood. So, for example, sometimes in Shurim, he'd sit in a shir, he would appear to be dozing, and suddenly, if a posuk was misquoted, he'd jump up and give you the correct posuk and the correct quotation, etc. This is something which we all have to aspire to, and something which I take great encouragement from in seeing the younger generation of Rabbonim. We're blessed to have two really excellent associate Rabbonim in Rabbi Portnoy, modestly at the back of the room, controlling the Zoom for us this evening. And also I think I saw Rai Stern here as well. And the learning which they've got and the ability to relate through the depth of their experiences in yeshiva, etc., and in wider learning and accomplishment to the community is something which is really important. A community which seeks just simply to maintain the tradition and the community which will not really have a future. The community has to build its future in terms of its ongoing dynamic learning, its connection to Torah, to Jewish values, to Jewish living, to Jewish life, etc. And perhaps one of the things we learn is, and people will feel this, if there's that sense of nostalgia, that sense of poignancy in reflecting on what the earlier generation were and that which they did, then we have to think about there's no one other than us to make that true and really happen in the here and now. And that, I think, is one of our significant and great challenges, which is perhaps, if I may say so in all humility, one of the reasons behind the writing of this particular book. I really hope that people who take this book and go on the journey with it will actually find, well, there's something here which speaks to me, which I need to develop further. And it's not which I, the reader, need to develop further. I, as the author, and every authentic Jewish man, woman, child needs to have this as a key aspiration in their life.
Anything on the changes in the shul that you...
So when I came to shul, we had a full-time cousin, we had a choir. It was a 3-hour Shabbos morning service, choral performance, if you like.
Of course,
yes, you're right, which had its merits, had its appeal, but I've always been far more a pragmatist than an idealist in these sorts of areas. So I grew up in my father's shul in South London, which also had a chazan and choir. I even sung in the choir as a child. Some may have seen me, Yom Neroim, as rabbi here, skipping up to the choir box before I was attacked by my arthritic knee, to be able to get up there and to sing with the choir, etc. I love those pieces, they speak to me. But I also understand that what speaks to me doesn't even speak to my own children and children-in-law. When I try and get some of these tunes around the Shabbos or Yom Tov table, they look at me, Dad, come on, let's get real, etc. And one has to accept that it's far more important, again, as I said before, rather than being about the transaction, it's about the personal. Part of being about the personal is to make sure that it's speaking to the generation. It's far more important that people are saying Shema with Kavanah, are davening in a way which is meaningful, are engaged in Jewish learning and living, than the way in which we achieve that. So I think there's plenty of room for change in those sorts of areas. We've certainly embraced it here. Anyone who's seen, and you're welcome to have a look after the end of the conversation at our newly remodeled main shul, will realize just how that change is happening in a infrastructure as well as in an individual and ongoing kehillah basis, people's life basis.
I just wonder, I'm going to pause for a moment with my because I just wonder whether there are questions.
A couple of weeks ago, when I asked you what's your book about, you said, and you mentioned it just before, this is an ancient philosophical question of the suffering of the righteous. And I won't be reading this expecting to know the answer, because nobody's known the answer for thousands of years. But I was interested to hear you said in your summary just before that the book is also about the solution offered by personal relationships. So I was wondering, that provides some insight into the link between these two concepts that you said the book is about. On the one hand, something from the concept of the suffering is righteous versus the power of the personal relationship.
Yeah, thank you, Colin. That's a very good point. I think that the main thing is an idea which I do refer to in the book, and that is when you're going through difficult times, you need certain anchorage points to which you can revert. And if your whole life is just built on transactional relationships, then you're going to find that much more difficult, because a transactional relationship happens, you get what you want, the other personal, there's a sense of every connection, meaning a greater degree of investment. And therefore, it won't solve and answer the question of Tzaddik V'Raloi. It will give the answer to which the book is really seeking to find that answer, which is, how do I cope with Tzaddik V'Raloi? How do I manage to move forwards? How do I manage, even though I'm hurting on my own behalf, on somebody else's behalf, how do I manage to move forward? Because some of us are introverts, some of us are extroverts. In fact, most of us are both at certain different points. But in particular, there are those who work things out through conversation and through connection with others, and there are others who do it much more, as Rabbi Schindler will understand what this means from a training session we had years ago, as analyzers. Just sit there and work it through for themselves. There's a bit of both of that, analyzers and connectors, and those who support, those who promote, etc., within all of us. But in the Israeli army, I believe there is a phrase that they say, which is a bit of a sharp phrase. They say, "Mi she'ochel levad, mate levad." The person who eats by themselves leaves this world by themselves. There's something about building relationships, which means that through sharing, through being together with others, and by the way, sharing doesn't just mean with one another, beings. It means sharing with the divine as well as other people, by sharing that into a level whereby you will find a pathway forwards. I described this in the book as, for example, in Lechododi on Friday night, there's a phrase where you say, Korva el nafshi, draw near to my soul, Ga'ala, you've redeemed it. That closeness itself isn't a way of explaining tzaddik v'raloi, it's a way of coping with it. And the book is seeking to cope with tzaddik v'raloi rather than to answer it.
Yes.
In a jigsaw, there's sometimes one piece which is really difficult to find a place for it. Now, I was wondering whether you could describe the most difficult sort of issue that you've had to deal with and how you resolved it.
Gosh, that's a good question, Paul. One of the very difficult questions was whether to leave Prestwich, Manchester, and come to Henton. It was a long time ago, but Rabbi Sachs gave me a very wise piece of advice at the time. He said to me, just remember, he said, sometimes we're called upon to write a chapter in the book, not the whole book. And so we sort of managed to do a bit of both, etc. But yes, there are obviously moments in life where you just are not quite sure where to turn. Chazal do tell us, it's a posuk actually, based on posuk, Beroiv Eitza Sushia, sometimes by talking with others. And the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos tells us that Ein Don Yechidi Ela Echad, there's only one who judges by himself. I found that seeking the counsel of colleagues, both those more experienced and wiser than myself, those less experienced and also wiser than myself, that has been something that's been very helpful as far as putting those pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together. People in my life in all sorts of areas of expertise to turn to discuss things with, to problem solve with, and above all else, I've been blessed with a wonderful Rebbetzin who is able to just tell me absolutely when I've got things wrong, occasionally when I've got things right. And when she read the first sort of 5,000 or 10,000 words of this book in its roughest draft, she said, "You're onto something here." And then they know, wow, I was really, really doing something then. So there you go.
Yeah.
First, I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to share your book launch with us. It's a special occasion for the shul. 2 parts to my question. The first one is, so now you've got the book out of your system, is that it? No more books? Or is there a sequel? And the second part is, what was the most challenging part of producing your book?
Thank you, David. Thank you both for the comments and for the questions. The most challenging part, I think actually was, and I mentioned this in the okay, repeat the question. Yes. So the question was in the book, number 2, and number 1 was, will there be a sequel? So the most challenging part of the book I mentioned was getting the last 15% done. I got about 85% done during COVID, and in particular when we went on sabbatical. That sabbatical was just something which was, it was truly remarkable. I'm grateful to the Shul, the United Synagogue, and those who made it possible for us to enjoy that sabbatical, as I mentioned again in the introduction to the book. But I wrote about 85% of it during that time. When we came back and got back into regular Shul life, it was just impossible to find the time to get the last 15% done. And actually, of course, many of you know that during the time before we were away and while we were in afterwards, my late father was very seriously ill, and when it came back, we shared it between us. We tried to make sure every weekday one of us at least was visiting. My sister came over from Israel once every 6 weeks or so, even during COVID, to visit, etc. I just didn't have the time or the headspace to finish it, but after that, I managed to find the time and to complete the book. So that really was the challenging part. A sequel. At the moment, as Pep Guardiola said, when he won the championship for the 4th time last season, Premiership, he said, let's just enjoy the moment. I don't know what that means about next season for me, though. For those who follow football, you understand that meaning. Okay.
Jonathan.
Yeah. The rabbinet's basically been in your blood
you've been a rabbi for many years and you've seen your late father be a communal rabbi as well. What skills have you had to acquire from scratch in recent years to enable you to do your job better?
In recent years, what do you call recent years?
Since coming to Riley Close.
Since coming to Riley Close. I'm not going to answer directly myself, but I will tell you something that a good friend and colleague of mine from Manchester, Rabbi Ginsbury Reuben tells, that he's a Ger Chossid, the Ger Rebbe. And when he told the Rebbe that he was coming to England to go into the rabbinate, he told me in Yiddish, "Ich fahre to England of the Rabbonus." And the Rebbe answered him, ja, hatzlocha mit the Savlonus. So the word Savlonus, Rabbonus, play on words. Rabbonus, yes, Savlonus. Savlonus means patience, means to be long-suffering. I think that one of the most important qualities is Rabbi Sachs said this once about the three things that really make a good rabbi are love of Torah, love of the Almighty, love of Israel, and then altogether love of people. And you've really got to be able, my late grandfather, Mr. Frohman, my maternal grandfather used to say always that you must take the people as they are, not as they should be. And I guess it may be not so much acquiring completely new skills. Certainly IT, I've continually had to upgrade in and miserably failed in certain areas, but somehow still got the book together. But in the main, it's constantly working and never coasting or assuming that any day is just going to be a remake of a previous day. People who come to my Tuesday morning Chabura, Kenny, Bob, I can see here, Richard, Rodney, others, David, others will know, Joe, yes, thank you. Anyone else I've missed out? Okay. So one of the things I often say there is that the Almighty, we say in Shachar every day, is Mechadesh B'tuva B'chol Yom Tov Ma'aseh Bereshis. He renews creation. It's not just a remake. It's not just a coasting of the previous day. You've got to be prepared to remake yourself each and every day. And that's something which I've tried to do and do to even greater extent and effect. I used to think, as in earlier years, that, gosh, I've really got to daven hard. But when I've got 10, 15 years more experience, I won't need so much divine assistance. I'll know how to do it all. You realize the longer you're in it, the more divine assistance you need, not less. So, intensity of prayer, actually, that is something seriously. I think intensity of prayer. Some will say I daven even longer. Might be complaints along those lines, but intensity of prayer definitely as well. Harvey, yeah.
Among obviously all communal rabbonim, pastoral qualities are absolutely essential. I think we all know in this community how you and Judy are absolute supremos when it comes to your pastoral abilities. How do you deal with the challenge of issues and surahs that members are facing in their own lives, empathizing and supporting without yourself being sort of dragged down emotionally by having to deal with all of our problems?
That is a very good question. I do actually deal with this to some extent in the book. There are areas where you'll find sweet, which is chapter 5, and also recovery, getting back on track, and understanding the ways in which one moves in different modalities. I mean, one of the other things which you didn't touch on was exactly this very similar associated allied question is, how do you move from a bris and a pidyon haben and a bar mitzvah and a wedding to a levaya and a stone setting and et cetera, et cetera? And the answer to that is a little bit easier to give because there's very much, I think my colleagues who are here will probably agree, it's about tuning in and tuning out. And it's really important that you make sure, not that you've got the right speech with you as you go to one event to another, that's definitely important, but you've got to actually have your headspace has to be right. And actually I had a very wise thing from one of our trainers many years ago who said that sometimes if you're not quite ready for something, don't step into it. hold back. And I wish I could do that also sometimes in my personal life as well. It doesn't always happen quite as well as that. And I remember one of my great Rebbeinu mentors, Reb Shlomo Wolber, said to me once, he said that his family sometimes feel that he's not always tuned into them the same way, the same extent as he is, if you like. And sometimes I feel I'm being stumbled in that way as well. In the main, one has to remember, and this is again about the humility I said before, about not all being about me and about being the principles, etc. However much you empathize, however much you're there, you have to respect the fact that Soros is primarily that person's Soros. That doesn't mean I don't care, it doesn't mean I don't empathize, doesn't mean I'm not in the room with the person at the time when I'm in the room with them. When I walk out of the room, I have to be able to have a certain degree of detachment. Otherwise, you're right, you wouldn't be able to care. And I've seen that from great mentors. I remember the late great Manchester Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Segal, whose grandson, Chaim Ehrentreu, is now one of our sons-in-law. I was once sitting with him and someone phoned up and they were clearly facing huge sorrows. And the Rosh Yeshiva sat there, literally his body was racked with groans. He was there, oi, oi, oi. And he put down the phone, took a deep breath, and looked at me. He said, callous or hard, whatever. That is just an answer, but it's the beginnings of it anyway.
You have done a lot of hospital visiting in your time, and not all Rabbanim do it as assiduously as you do. I'd often run into it for free. What have you learned from all those visits?
So Sheldon's asking, and this is a former consultant in geriatrics, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So geriatrician, what do I learn from my visits to hospitals? One thing I've learned is don't go at meal times. There's all sorts of reasons for that. And there was one occasion when I visited somebody and they were having the regular hospital meal, and I put it down to the fact that they were confused and it was dementia, whatever, etc. I found that just so deeply painful. If I may, I'll just diverge for a moment into a great story, which is sort of the people don't think of me so much perhaps as a curative worker, but I was once on this. One of the reasons I prefer always to fly halal. Number of reasons. I don't get paid by halal for saying this, and they don't even send money to the co-ord for saying this. But I was once flying British Airways, and there was an irreligious shliach sitting next to me, and he was about to have the regular glut treif, be a meal. And I convinced him, I persuaded him, I said, look, take my, it was at the time Hermelis meal, glut kosher, kedassim, take my meal, and
Not swap it.
no. Anthony, let me finish the story.
So much funnier anything like that.
No, it was worse than that, because he was a really decent, good fellow, and he didn't want to deprive me of my meal. And I showed him, look, my wife prepared me sandwiches, I've got food, I've got things, etc. It's all fine. So I take the meal, and I think that in heaven, the angels are singing, they're all singing praises. Ginsbury, what an amazing fellow, fantastic. I look to my left, and I see he's taken a pat of butter from his BA meal and smeared it all over his kosher kedassim meat. So not quite as good, but almost as good. So sometimes, everyone's eating kosher. That's one thing you do know at least. So yeah, what else about visiting hospitals? To ask permission. So first, I want to say one other thing. Harvey and you have been very kind about my pastoral and Jewish pastoral activities. I must tell you, I have something which is, for every visit I make, I know that there must be another 3 or 4 I could make and haven't made. And that is also something which does play on the mind. And like you say about, the emotional burden, you can't be beaten up by that. You can't be beaten up by the fact you don't make every visit you should make. But if ever people do know, Moshe used to be fantastic. He always used to whisper, Rebbe, have you been to visit so-and-so? Which means I know that so-and-so was saying the rabbi hasn't been to visit. So but I think I've learned something else as well. In earlier years, I used to sometimes say, would your husband appreciate a visit? And Judy told me, she was quite right, it's the wrong language, because appreciate means, I'm not going there to be appreciated, it's would your husband would it be helpful if I were to visit him? And you have to be so careful with language. And so some say, not this week, Rabbi said, that's fine, because I'm visiting for your husband or your wife's benefit, not for my benefit. It's not because I've got to tick the box that I visited. I'm visiting genuinely because I want to make the person feel that little bit better, lifted, elevated, etc. And then I'll go to another book, one of my favorite books, which I do quote from in the Jigsaw Life, by Tversky's Generation to Generation. He tells the story of why he went into psychiatry and psychotherapy rather than the rabbinate. He said, although he was his father, who was an outstanding rabbi's assistant, he once went to visit a patient whom his father had visited. And at the end of the visit, he said, your visit has been amazing. I feel so much better, but I'm still in pain. When your father visits, I don't even have pain afterwards. I wish and I aspire to get to that level.
We've been going for an hour or so, and I think we ought to wrap it up, but I'm going to exercise chair's privilege and ask the last question. It's a question that I've been curious to hear the answer to for years, and for one reason or another, it's never actually come up in our conversations. But because you, Rabbi Ginsbury, because you so live the part of the rabbi, and because certainly in my own imagination, when I think of a rabbi, I think of you. It intrigues me sometimes to wonder what if you hadn't become a rabbi, what perhaps you might have wanted to do with your life. What would have been the plan B? What would have been the alternative career?
To my right, I have a rather vociferous gathering of children, etc. And I heard one or two suggestions. Anybody want to suggest what they might? Rich?
That's not a career.
I did, believe it or not, before I went to yeshiva in Israel, go for an interview to Gonville and Keys to read law. I did, at one particular point, actually have a place after yeshiva and kollel when it looked like I wouldn't find a place in the rabbinate, because the former president of the United Synagogue told me that I would never make the grade as a US rabbi.
And who remembers him?
Rabbi Sachs was extremely kind at the time. He was principal of Jews College, as it was then, and he said, you don't need to come and learn to me, you'll find your way in the rabbinate. That was very kind of him. I had a place then to read law at Buckingham, and then I got the call to Presbyterian Congregation in Manchester, and the rest was history, etc. What would I have done? I hope when people read the Apostle of Life, they'll say, you know, he doesn't write that badly. So maybe I've done something that line. I'm always interested in the helping profession, so maybe something in the realm of psychotherapy. I'm quite interested by how things work. So I may have done something in the realm of, I don't know, architecture, building or something, although I'm totally impractical, so I'm not sure that would really have worked. But if we're coming to the conclusion, which we must do, and there are some lovely refreshments inside, and that beautiful, beautiful memento of the evening, which my wife has ensured is prepared, so you will have to go inside and take a look at that in a moment. There was one question, we didn't rehearse much of tonight, did we, Anthony?
No, we didn't.
It's been quite impromptu.
Totally.
But there was one question I did ask you to ask me, and you haven't asked it. Do you remember which that was? I remember it.
Okay,
Yeah.
remind me and
So
I'll ask
you said, what's the best story
yes.
that didn't make it into the book?
Yes.
So the best story is one a number of years ago. Some of you remember I had a kidney stone on Yom Kippur, and it was pretty horrible. Erev Yom Kippur, Cliff Wolf remembers getting me into the garden clinic at very short notice, and there I was when I should have been davening mincha Erev Yom Kippur, having an ultrasound, etc. And the consultant was saying, "You cannot speak or daven over Yom Kippur," which was absolute purgatory, but not for the community. And move between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. So I was in St. John Elizabeth, and I was in my gown, walking out of the room with Judy at my side to go down to surgery. A door opens, the room opposite, and a member of the shul, a woman, comes out. She said, Rabbi Ginsbury, said, how funny to see you here. My husband's not well. Would you like to come and visit him? So Judy turns around and she says, he's going down for surgery. Give him a break. And the lady says, oh, never mind. She says, I hope it goes well. Maybe on the way back.
Yeah, well, I thank you very much, Rabbi Ginsbury, on behalf of us all. Please, those of you who haven't yet bought multiple copies of the book, Rabbi Ginsbury is available for a limited period of the next year or so to actually sign them. But immediately after this event, we're going to go to the right, or our right and your left, for a spectacular something, which I haven't seen yet, but which sounds tremendous. I want to thank everybody for coming, and also people joining by Zoom, and a particular shout out to Professor Ginsbury.
Yeah.
We miss you and wish you a complete and full recovery. And I think that's it. So thank you very much for coming.
So it wouldn't be a shul event if the rabbi didn't have a lot by way of thanks.
I've already got a copy of the book.
But this is one you can sell on Amazon. Something just personal for you to thank you for coming. And thank you all so much. The truth is, quite honestly, I could not possibly have done it or continue to do it without the wonderful synergy and beautiful relationship. And please enjoy yourself.
I just need to get a photo of you and Anthony together for the Shaw magazine.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Can you just stand in front of this? If it ever comes to a resale, once it's signed,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, yeah.
Was by he went hospital visits. He was at 25%. Didn't know what to do. So he had to get some shape to the show when you visit people. So the list of people to visit. Last one is person to give us some topic. It says when somebody visits a friend, they take away a 60th of the day. And this one's a lot of day. My job's, if you give me as a friend, and I leave, I'll take away 60th of the day.
Yeah.
wonderful.
that's a good question, actually.
Rabbi Schmidt.
Oh, yeah. See you in the morning.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. This is Paul. To Paul and Sasha. And the kids, family, Paul and Sasha. No, I'm fine, but do you want to take the seat? Sit down. You sure? You sure? Okay. No, I'm fine, thank you. I've been having water, I'm okay. Thanks, thanks very much. Paul, Sasha, and family. S.A. Yeah.
The hospital visited me, Rabbi Ginsbury came to see me once, and I wasn't there. He came all the way to Clementine.
Oh, yeah, long time. I know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. With pleasure, with pleasure, pleasure. Andrew? So Alison and Andrew?
Yeah, going right on.
Training medics come to my office, my building, to do training in robotics. I was talking to them and I was saying, I'm thinking, like, so good. Why? The last time they did training, sometimes they have they were hacked
Very good, pleasure. I feel bad for standing, so let me just, yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to ask the wrong question.
Yep.
I was going to ask the wrong question.
You can.
Barney Close is one of the biggest United States schools. We've got a membership from people who do nothing.
Yes.
To people who are
Yes.
And it must be very hard to make sure that when you do to our Torah and the beyond
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a way of what's known as differentiation. So you'll notice I might tell a story sometimes about sport, sometimes about politics, and then sometimes about terrorists. I'm trying to, as it were, connect with everyone, to connect, to be connected. That's very important. Yep, 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 indeed. That's a good point as well. And girls as well.
Elaine, Nigel, Abital, and Miriam.
Okay. Okay, with pleasure. Miriam or Miriam?
Miriam.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. We're so we have to.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me we push forward as they?
Not at all. Not at all. Thank everyone else.
No, I am thanking everybody else.
As long as you spell Raphael's name right, that's all that matters.
You want to impersonate
Actually,
Harry
do it on this
Potter,
page. Yes, it'd be-
Serious?
yes, my uncle and aunt.
I know.
No,
I'll
do
it
on there.
I think so, I
Do
think
it on
so.
do it on the front.
Yeah. Just be like everyone else wants David to show, you know,
I like to be different.
I know that.
Yeah. Their name there anyway, that's what matters. That's lovely.
Thanks, Stephen, for that.
RAPHAELLA.
David?
And David, that's normal, yeah.
And
You can
David-
spell. No, just say don't worry. Other people waiting.
Thank you so much.
I think we're going to run.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Let's make a figure. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Julius, there you go. Pleasure. Of course.
Especially when it's out with
To Helen and Daniel. Kids, you want just the two of you? Okay, right.
Yeah, totally. Don't get it right, and the difference between getting it right and getting it not right, it can be like one of the being stressed than they should be, or like ratios off, or missing someone that needs to be upset when they're just 70 plus. Yeah, no, it's amazing. But just like, what that means is that we have a very high number of 10 male people, but that's a good thing. It adds some diversity.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Pleasure.
Because I've got for the children as well. I'm sorry, everybody.
Do you want me to sign them all? So you know what? So let me do the ones that are singles. You want to leave them with
Have a drink and we'll
come back. Leave them there. Hopefully they won't disappear. But leave them there and we'll do them.
I'm being so stressed. Wonderful evening, Rabbi.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We're aware of it and we're doing no job. Yeah, we all know.
Yes, to family. Yes.
Might have changed because you might have like 2 birthday parties and then to
we've tried to do social things. It's with a honeymoon period ended and with a crunch. And now there's this one thing I'm doing, which I'm taking too long to do, and I'm getting my knickers in it. And it's not nice to kind of, but like say, to be uneasy about it. Because everyone's got smiles and it's done. It's been fun. And like one is doing the fun stuff to do, month end, like deal with liquidity, tax, all the other bits and bobs.
Thank you,
Hello. I will do. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for your making it happen. Okay, see you. That's a great story. Great.
I was going to say to you, I hope you make this well when you show me my message. Okay, so first one's Tilly and Ronnie.
Okay. That's Leah or Leah. Yeah.
Just shake your hand.
Oh,
it was a lovely evening.
Thank you for coming. Thank you.
I saw you at your best.
Ah, you're very kind. Very kind. Thank you.
I always say you're best.
I wish I saw myself like this. Thank you. Thank
You knew rabbis could be so funny.
I thought they'd all be like,
yeah. We've always like naughty people.
when I get to how to survive the job, the real
yeah, humor. Yeah.
The other one is for Josh. Just make it Josh and Lisa.
Okay.
Might help him with this.
So they're going to be on Amazon within the hour. Within the hour.
When I find them, I'll sell them again.
Exactly.
Hope make a living out of it.
From the publishers themselves.
The phone's going a bit loud. Yeah.
Say something else. So to them, and then like the actual business doesn't really care. So
Go back. Thank you ever so much.
Right.
So yeah, I think just
Simon
us.
Cassie.
Yeah,
Simon
and
Cassie
family,
family.
Say Daniel's family. I think it's yeah, Daniel's
Then
family.
they'll think Simon's family or Daniel's family. I say Simon Cassie and family.
Yeah.
Yeah, or and kids.
I think, well, yeah, Simon Cassie and family. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, right.
Bye, Dad.
Thanks.
See you.
Is it okay outside? Is it okay to take cupcake or not?
I don't know, I can see.
Okay, we're going to get enough for everyone?
Yeah?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, good. Thanks. Thanks to everyone. I should have thanked you actually. Thanks very much. See you.
Mika started my mitzvah class tomorrow.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, Ida. Good to see you. Nice to see you, Jasmine. How you doing? All right. Good, good, good. Thanks for coming. Do you need a book? Yeah? How'd you get that? Yeah, 28. Cassie, Simon Cassie.
Cassie and Simon.
Yeah.
I had a missed call from you.
There we go. Pleasure.
I'll see you Wednesday.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no. Is there somewhere in the diary? There's somewhere in the diary. Somewhere. Hi. Hello. Come on, sign privately, doesn't it? You can sort it out for Malky. She's got protexia. If you want to wait, I'll do it with pleasure. Nigel, Esther, kids, Esther, Nigel, Esther, Nigel, and family. Yeah. Or Zach and Beth.
Why not go in?
Okay. Okay.
Can't say they'll be reading it tomorrow. But
No. ZAC, isn't it?
ZAC,
Yeah.
don't spoil it now, David. I'm reading it now.
Read the prefix and the other bit.
You could probably finish it by the time we finish it.
Make the most of the time.
There's one particular word there which is deliberately put in. Connection and engagement.
Yes, okay.
Yes, okay. Yeah.
Right, thank you so much.
One of our proudest achievements, I was telling you, it really is. Professor?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, go straight to straight. Perry. Thank you for being. Thank you. Sorry for the wait. Sorry,
Don't worry,
yes,
don't worry.
Yeah. The evenings get young, right? So, Chavan Perry, did you want the kids' names mentioned as well? Yeah. Abishai. And Rose. Leah Rose. L-I-A, yeah. Dash.
Yeah.
Claire, sit down, take a chair. It's going to be a long evening. It's going to be a long evening. For now.
This is true.
The one
No
signed
pressure
one, yeah. Signed on the day of its release.
Exactly. It's almost there.
Now, make sure I get it right. So,
Well, isn't it?
didn't it come with the girls' names as well, or just David and family? Yeah.
Yeah. We actually put those girls in.
Okay.
Just to make it more challenging.
So Liz, David, go on.
Talia with a Y.
I wouldn't have got that right. Go on.
Yeah, Ollie with an I. And Ariana.
I'll sign yours.
Yeah, you sign hers. Yeah.
I'll do 2 for the price of 1.
Great idea.
You are still on Zoom?
There are actually.
They're waiting for the books.
Yeah, give them a wave. Your wife is listening in.
That I'm gonna run because
Thanks. Thanks so much.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of pictures and videos. For you,
Ah,
so
okay.
I'll send them
Okay,
over.
thank you. Thanks very much, man. Take care.
Really?
Pleasure. Oh, thank you. Okay.
Now, first time it's me and my wife Danielle.
Yeah.
My wife is brown too.
I was trying to Hasmonean, you know. That's,
Yeah.
Okay. So, dear Danielle.
And Danielle, yeah.
DANIELLE. With for Anthony.
Anthony, yeah.
Luigi.
No.
A-N-T.
With an H,
Yes.
yeah. Robertson okay?
She's fine. She had surgery last week. She had 2 hernias. So she managed to nice room to do it. It was top man all free. So good hands, but it's a bit of recovery. So had the open surgery, couldn't do keyholes.
Probably
So
careful about lifting up.
yeah, absolutely.
Probably key iron keyhole, but probably keyhole is amazing. There's like no marks
Yeah.
at all, but
Yeah.
it's still your kishkas inside. That's what you got to remember.
I've left books on my desk. I'll
Yes.
give them to you tomorrow. People have left them for you to sign with their names on top of it.
Brilliant. So I was going to tell you that, put post-it notes, and then they say what they wanted. They say what they wanted written or not.
What, like happy birthday?
Oh, yeah, happy Hanukkah.
No, just their names.
Right, okay.
Maybe
Thanks.
do some funny messages and stuff.
Deborah, thanks for everything. It's great news, wasn't it?
I've never seen it.
Yeah.
I know, what a turnout.
Yeah.
I was messaging your wife most of the evening.
Okay.
sending her pictures.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Is she out of hospital now?
Yeah, but she's home, but it's tougher than she thought it would be, but she's pleased she had it done.
Always. They always
Yeah.
make light of it.
Yes.
They never quite. You know what they always never tell you about? The fatigue. The feeling very tired.
Yeah. It's not pain. Don't worry.
There's half a box left.
Where is my computer? That's one thing I would like to know. Oh, no. Rabbi Paul knows, you've got my computer, my laptop.